Welcome back to what I think will be episode 3 of this. And in this one, we're going to look at designing a golf hole. Now, 12 is not complete. Now, when I do these courses, I don't tend to do holes to 100% completion, or really even very close to that. I will go through and rough in ideas, first of all, so I get big picture stuff, as we talked about last time. And then I'll pick a couple of holes that I think are in particularly challenging areas of the plot. And that was this awkward routing bit. Which I'm now happy with, but it's the bit I wanted to spend my time thinking on, and also it's a highlight area of the course. If I don't get this right, then it all kind of falls apart. Now, I'd say 12 is about 60% complete in reality, but it feels a little closer to that. It's at a point where it's got enough that I'm happy with it as an idea, and I don't think I'm going to be blowing it up in its entirety. I might still. I've done rough ideas of where little bits of planting are going to go. Might still be redone. I've placed crowds. I've got the bunkers pretty close to where I'll be wanting them. The fairway sculpting hasn't really been touched yet. So I haven't done much playtesting. I've done like 3, 4, 5 shots maybe. I've checked that you can carry driver to here. I'm not good enough to be able to really do it consistently, and I would never go for it, but you can. I've checked the 3 wood down to here. I've checked 3 wood over to here. I've checked 5 wood back to here. And if you play here, you're a muppet. So it's kind of there. But if I completed this to 100%, what I would then feel is I wouldn't ever want to change something. And I always want to leave myself that possibility that I could go back and redo something if I didn't like it. And that's important to do in a sequence of holes. So if I played, say, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I go, actually, this one's still a bit underwhelming, we need to tweak something, well, I'm far more likely to spot that playing in a sequence than I am when I've just done it on its own. You can get tunnel vision. So we're going to move away from this one, and we're going to look at 13. Now, what are the challenges of 13? Well, it's really long. It's 265. It's over water. That's the kind of Cypress Point 16 vibe we're going for. So those two in and of themselves are quite challenging. However, how are we going to mitigate that? Quite a big green. I'm aiming for par to be like a pretty standard score here. You might get, but I don't want it to be like you get that and it's a really tricked up green. Like there's going to be pins that are accessible. There's going to be pins that need you to make par probably. And I don't want to do it too like, I don't know. I don't want it to be forced, but that's something that could happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and kind of look at what we've got as the land, what an idea could be, and then I'll time lapse it for a bit. And you'll probably see me redo stuff, and that's all part and parcel. And you may not even see me redo stuff, and I may come back in and edit it later and add to this video. But yeah, episode 3 is going to be 13. So what I quite like about this one, we've got land that seems pretty natural for some bunkers banked into the trees that I've popped down. I was careful with the trees not to be blocking out the view of the lone cypress on 12, but I wanted something just breaking this up and separating these two holes a touch. So we're going to have 2 bunkers probably there. You could even have a third there if we wanted, but actually I want to give fairway bailout even though no one will need it. I think a bunker back there and one somewhere back here. Now what that then suggests is we're going to have a green that's kind of going this way. And maybe just working. Don't love that shape. Kind of seeing something that's more requiring a bit of a fade off the ocean, because I think that's a scarier shot. Like hitting a draw, to my mind, over land is less scary than starting the ball over the ocean. So we want to get it requiring that sort of turn. Now, I want this to be a big green. That's probably a bit too big. Bring the bunkers back in a little bit. That'd be 47 or so. Feels about right. Now, given that'll be quite a nice balance because this one's tiny, 27 by 16. It's a very small green. So going, and for length of shot or approach, that's kind of like a par 4. That's a pitch shot approach or less. This one's going to be full 3, would maybe even drive it to the back. Okay. So something like that. Now, I haven't yet really mentioned what I like about the land. We've got this little ridge that's kind of feeding into the green. And I think for a less accomplished player, that's quite helpful because you can land a shot out here and it will funnel you somewhere onto the green. For the more skilled player, that's tough because it's harder to control exactly where the ball ends up. And I kind of think I want you to be able to land to this area without too much difficulty. I think the tougher pins will be these ones where you're working that fade in. Let's draw out fairway. Fairway's the obvious bit. That's easy. You just fill the remaining space, basically. We may end up expanding this land just a little. Now, one thing that is coming to mind is, do we have potentially too many of these kind of little funnel slopes? Now, I know I'm going to have one on 15 in quite a big way. We kind of have one on 12 where you land it short right and work it on, but you can go straight for 12 as well if you could carry. Of the two, the one to get rid of is probably 12. You need it less. But also, this is me thinking aloud, by the way. On 12, it's taking you in from left to right. This is taking you in from right to left. And I think it's more kind of like more of a ridge than it is a simple kicker, which sounds very similar, but they're kind of different in how they act. Okay. Let's lay down a shape and we can play around with moving it around and see what we get. And it's important that it goes pretty close right the way to the edge. Definitely a larger green. Yeah, much larger. Maybe too big. I want to avoid having fairway shorts, I think. And maybe we do need a little bit of fairway short. Because it means that a front pin is still doable. You've just got to carry it to here and land it to roll onto the front pin. Whereas a front pin, if we do as is going to be utterly inaccessible. And that'll allow me to bench the green a little bit further back. Let's go that way. Okay, at this point I'm kind of hating all of the measure tools and we've got too many of them. I'm going to start with the bunkers that I do think will sit really naturally, however we do them. I kind of like that a bit more. I mean, the other option is we use this high shelf as a bit of pinnable location, but does that take us away from the water too much? Yeah. But you could have it where you kind of roll over this to get to the back part. That would be interesting. Let's start by looking at the land a bit more first. So it's how we make the most of this high point, really. Okay, let's imagine hitting that shot. It's a long way back. So those bunkers are really in play if you try to use this kicker slope and you miss. So you'd be hitting a pretty strong 3-wood into here, landing, rolling down into here. That's a cool way to access that pin, actually. And then you've got this slope that if you hit it there, will kind of redirect you this way. It's not going to do it just yet, but that's kind of what my mind is seeing. And in terms of that one, if you land it here, that takes you to about there and then redirects you in. So very doable for those two short pins. What we're seeing is how you can get different ways of landing the ball to the same pin. Obviously, you can always fly it all the way. land it here on a straight line, go straight. Of course, that's an option, but it's how could you get creative with it and give people different ways to attack them. The benefit of thinking like this is it also really works nicely in different winds. Okay, I think this is the route we're going to go down. So we allow fairway here, we move the green a bit further inwards and back, and then we work some stuff around it. How wide do we want that green to be? I think only about there, right? And then we'll have some fairway short, and that allows people to land it short and run it on as well if they want to. Because that's still risky as hell. Like yeah, 10 yards is about perfect. Obviously might change with playtesting, but... And then our green's still pretty large. I'm going to cut it about... Suddenly taken on a slightly Rossier shape. But I do like that. I think when the flag is there next to those trees, that's going to look really good. 2 bunkers there. Bunker here. Bunker here. Maybe episode 3 is just me talking and doing ideas, and then you get the time lapse in episode 4. It gives you an idea of like the pace that I will typically go at, which, and as I've mentioned on the first 2, why you won't get this in the Andre style format, because our workflows are very, very different. Okay, so let's say we need you to be able to use that bit. Be really careful to allow enough fairway just around here. Pretty razor thin. Especially as anything landing there is going to go in there. Anything landing too far this way is going to roll down to here. The general slope on the greens, I'm guessing about 4 feet. 5.5. And that's a good back to front slope. So the question would then be whether we raise up this bit or lower this bit. That will come with playtesting. Okay, pop some surfacing down. Tuck a pin right the way back there. So when I'm doing greens, you'll have seen me doing this on videos. I'm kind of paying attention to the size of the spine a little bit. With this green, it's got to be a bit bigger anyway. It's got to house a longer shot. 122 feels giant though. So the question I've got is whether it's too wide, a little, and if so, which side we take in. Whether it's a bit too long, definitely. So I think I probably want to take 5 yards off the front, a few yards off the back. And a few yards off each side, frankly. So then we end up with something like that. Go out a little towards the bunker. And that means it's 265 to a front pin, 290 to a back pin. Punchy. I don't know if I love that distance, but I don't see it other than, well, we could always move the tees, so it's, yeah, probably move the tee forward a bit. This feels much better. Okay, 100 is slightly bigger than average. I can probably expand this a touch. It really depends on how much slope I want to have on the green and how much slope I want to have off. My mindset is I probably want more off the green to divert the ball and then allow people to go at it if they want to. just need to work out what I'm doing with the green and which bits of land I'm moving. I think the answer is we're lowering here. So with this, there are two ways of getting the screen flat. Oh, there's multiple. We could simply just go like this, but that removes a ton of that natural interest that we're trying to work off. I'd far rather use raise. You could use this one, but that takes away everything. And suddenly you have to manufacture it all, and that will lead to awkward sculpting, which is where we get weird breaks on greens. Although this can be the best way of kind of getting the neatest greens you can. But yeah, please don't do that one. You can do this. Again, it takes away a lot of the interest, but it can work nicely around the edges of greens. If you are ever using flatten on greens, do it with really small brushes and do it with really fuzzy brushes, typically either this one or occasionally this one. Or if you're going for the Rainer style, you can use some of these and then work out from that. But it's a different style of golf. The other way is working out just gently raising and lowering so that it keeps all of that natural sloping, but it works a little bit more naturally. And it's a little less aggressive with removing, it won't remove those awkward slopes. Now we wanted to keep this kind of high plateau. So in order to lose this sloping, I'm going to raise up off the side a little bit and then lower down, which kind of also, remember, any lower you do is going to effectively raise somewhere else as well. All I'm doing here, I'm not really worried too much about the slopes on the green, other than that I kind of know I don't want a load of red on the inside. This is going to be a great little spot for a bunker. This is this one. This can all come down just a little. And this side can certainly come up. So you'll see with these raises, I'm not really explaining it. Sculpting needs to be intuitive. But what we've got is we've got the center of this brush slightly off the left. And if we're raising it, that's going to mean that this bit raises up loads, middle raises up less. It's going to gently get rid of that red slope that we've got on the corner. And the closer you get to it, you can kind of see how it's acting under the brush. Do a load of this, where you're looking at what's going on before you click. As you can see, we've kind of gotten rid of a lot of it. And then another way of smoothing a red slope on the edge, lower just inside it as well, because that makes the gradient more consistent, which is really what you want. If you've got a big fall off, you want the land moving towards that. You just don't want it hitting it immediately. Quite like, there's a little, so it might not be exactly what it's doing, but you look at what the green is kind of suggesting to you as well. I quite like having a little spine here, tiny little ridge that then feeds back down to a back pin here as well. Suddenly I think you've got a couple of distinct pins. So you've got one front where you've got a ridge, you can go straight at it and use that as a backstop. Small, but you can. You can roll it in from this way. You can go straight at it and land it and roll it up. You could land it short and roll it all the way over. Got a back one where you're trying to just get over that ridge, or use this slope to try and get it round. Although I've yet to decide whether I do want a tier or just a general slope. You've got front right, back right, you're playing to here and kind of rolling it over this one. So it's how do we want that slope to come in so that you are actually rolling over, and then how will that interact with other pins? And then you've got front right one, which is just going to be a pretty much the question is going to be land it here and roll it on. Could even expand the green front right a touch as well. Okay. I think that's probably going to do it for this episode. You've seen a lot of how I think through a golf hole. It's been half an hour, which is pretty good without being interrupted by children. So gives you an idea of all the big picture stuff that you look at and the amount of consideration that needs to go in. And at this point, do I know that this hole will certainly stay? I think it's pretty good chance at this point that I'm okay with it in its current guise. When I plant it out, I think it will work really nicely. The bunkering will work really well. I think the concept is good. The execution will doubtless need some tweaking. So with the next episode, what I'll probably go into is do more a bit of a recap, any changes that I make between now and then, which will be probably significant. I'll then go into bunker shaping, green fine tuning, green sculpting, a little bit of test planting, and then we'll talk through that, and you get an idea of kind of the speed and level at which we go. But yeah, as ever, hopefully entertaining and useful, and that I kind of want to do more of these where it's just talking through stuff. So yeah, I lost you halfway along the way. Apologies, but that's what this is. See you later.